This is part 18 of our Revelation study. We're looking at Armageddon and the binding of Satan specifically here, and also Jesus on their white horse. Having already determined the identities of the beasts, one as Rome and the other as a religious sect of Jerusalem, and the identity of the prostitute as the great city, the remaining chapters don't require a lot of explanation as the judgment unfolds in the action. In the futurist schema, there are many fantastic interpretations of these scenes, which rely mainly upon imagination regarding presumptive rebellions and great wars in the possible future. Anybody can pick out current world leaders and suggest that Revelation has them in view. But if we did this, we'd be in danger of doing just what countless interpreters have done over the centuries. Instead, this study presumes that these events have been played out primarily in and around the destruction of Jerusalem and of the temple in AD 70, Megiddo. The fact that John discusses the defeat of the beasts at Megiddo emphasizes that he has Jerusalem and Israel in mind in this defeat. In the same way that Jezreel had come to represent a place of battle, loss, and judgment, especially regarding kings in Ahab's lineage, so did Megiddo represent a place of battle for the Jerusalem kings. When Jehu took the northern kingdom and slew Israel's king Jehoram at Jezreel, he also pursued and killed Jerusalem's king Ahaziah at Megiddo. The two kings of divided Israel and Judah fell in their corresponding cities. Later, the good king Josiah, in some regards Judah's greatest king ever, the one who rediscovered the law and instituted a great reformation, stepped in to intercept Pharaoh Necho and was killed at Megiddo. Pharaoh Necho, or Pharaoh Necho, was called by God, he said, to battle the king of Assyria, and when Josiah confronted him, Josiah died. This draws our attention to Egypt as well as to the exile and to the armies of the north. Josiah was the last really good king of Judah, and the remaining kings were all killed or captured by the invading forces, leading to the fall and destruction of Jerusalem in 586 BC. These images are all in play in Revelation and in the Battle of Armageddon. Megiddo has played a pivotal role as a battleground in this series of historical events and has a similar role in Revelation 19. Kenneth Gentry sees this as indicative of the centrality of Israel in the Armageddon vision, as opposed to the centrality of Rome, emphasizing that this is judgment on Jerusalem, the theme of Revelation 1:7. Jesus, the Son of Man, has come on the clouds to heaven, not from heaven, to destroy those who killed him, which was the climactic vision of the destruction of the harlot in Revelation 17 and 18 so far. We are now seeing a recapitulation and refocus of that climax. This reminds me of the way Genesis 2 repeats a portion of the creation sequence from Genesis 1. It focuses in on Adam and Eve. Here, at the end of Revelation 19, we see how the destruction, the uncreation event of the harlot, is seen also as the defeat of the two beasts. We have to keep in mind that John was writing to those 7 churches of Asia Minor and was encouraging their perseverance. This vision was for them, and it demonstrates the defeat of those who are instigating their tribulation, those who were killing them, casting them out of the synagogues, throwing them in jail, and pressuring them toward apostasy. In this regard, Jesus comes and defeats those enemies and vindicates the 7 churches and their martyrs. There are also other persecutions to follow, but contrary to common opinion, they are not of the same ferocity or reach as Nero's was. As has been noted previously, the persecution of Domitian, which many take to be the backdrop of Revelation, is no longer seen as a general persecution of Christians as Nero's was. Although the Armageddon focus is upon Jerusalem, we also see the beast from the sea thrown into the lake of fire. Primarily, this is interpreted as the first persecutor, Nero, who has died in AD 68. This is presented at the beginning of the events pictured here, as his suicide is still the forefuture of John's audience. There is also an element of future fulfillment for John and his contemporaries, in that their defeat is of the already not yet eschatology in relation to AD 70. This monumental event in redemptive history has separated Christianity from Judaism, and it has marked the period of events ending the persecutions of Nero that the 7 churches were suffering in their time. But it also signals a day a few centuries in the future where Rome will be conquered by Christianity itself, and then Rome will finally fall. Apocalyptic language in the Old Testament. Sometimes we think of the vast destruction described in these events and think it can only occur at some point in the future, since we've never seen such devastation in history. First, though, we must note from Josephus that the events of Revelation had a very nearly literal fulfillment in the siege and destruction of Jerusalem. The streets actually did run with blood. People actually did resort to cannibalism, and the bodies really were stacked up on top of one another. But one feature of the Bible that made me doubt that Revelation was teaching that worldwide destruction pictured by futurists is that this is the same language, the very language of the Old Testament. I have countless examples and will provide just a small sample of them here. First is a Psalm of Asaph, and although there is often prophecy in the Psalms, this, as with my other examples, describes a historical event within the witness of the Old Testament authors. Notice the similarities to the language of Revelation and the historical fall of Jerusalem in AD 70. Psalm 79, a Psalm of Asaph. O God, the nations have come into your inheritance. They have defiled your holy temple. They have laid Jerusalem in ruins. They have given the bodies of your servants to the birds of the heavens for food, the flesh of your faithful to the beasts of the earth. They have poured out their blood like water all around Jerusalem, and there is no one to bury them. Psalm 18. Of David, the servant of the Lord, he sang to the Lord the words of this song, when the Lord delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. Smoke rose from his nostrils, consuming fire came from his mouth, burning coals blazed out of it. He parted the heavens and came down. Dark clouds were under his feet. He mounted the cherubim and flew. He soared on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his covering, his canopy around him, the dark rain clouds of the sky. Out of the brightness of his presence, clouds advanced, with hailstones and bolts of lightning. The Lord thundered from heaven. The voice of the Most High resounded. He shot his arrows and scattered the enemy. With great bolts of lightning he routed them. The valleys of the sea were exposed, and the foundations of the earth laid bare, at your rebuke, Lord, at the blast of breath from your nostrils. As a student of the Old Testament, you'll recall that none of this literally happened when David escaped Saul. Instead, David is setting his escape in terms of the Exodus and using the language of Mount Sinai. Nahum chapter 1, the oracle against Nineveh, the book of the vision of Nahum, the Elkoshite. He shouts a battle cry against the sea and makes it dry up. He makes all the rivers run dry. Bashan and Carmel wither, the blossom of Lebanon withers. The mountains tremble before him, the hills convulse. The earth is laid waste before him. The world and all its inhabitants are laid waste. And now I will break Assyria's yoke bar from your neck. I will break apart the shackles that are on you. Notice likewise the historical destruction of Assyria is cast in Exodus language as God comes to act on the behalf of his people. This is that same language that we see and the same scope represented in Revelation. Also, when God sends Nebuchadnezzar against Jerusalem in 605 BC, Jeremiah describes it in the same language as John uses in Revelation. Jeremiah 7:32. So watch out, says the Lord. The time will soon come when people will no longer call those places Topheth or the valley of Ben Hinnom, but they will call the valley of slaughter, and they will bury so many people in Topheth that they will run out of room. Then the dead bodies of these people will be left on the ground for the birds and wild animals to eat. There will not be any survivors to scare them away. I will put an end to the sound of joy and gladness, or the glad celebration of brides and grooms throughout the towns of Judah and the streets of Jerusalem, for the whole land will become a desolate wasteland. There are countless more examples of this in the Old Testament, but these few among those dozens will suffice to make the point for now. Jesus on the white horse. We have seen the 4 horsemen announced with the opening of the seals, but now a lone rider appears on the white horse in Revelation 19:11. Despite the color of this horse, this is not the same horseman that we saw in Revelation 6. This is the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. As we saw when discussing the Alpha and Omega, this is Jesus Christ, the Lord God Almighty, and he is judging the 2 beasts and the harlot Babylon. This is the coming of the Son of Man in judgment. This is a look into the spiritual reality, behind Jesus casting the temple out as he cast out the demons that overran Israel during his earthly ministry. This is what happened when he cast out of the vineyard the murderous tenants and put away the adulterous wife. The binding of Satan and the first resurrection. With the church loosed from its connection to Jerusalem and the temple, the millennium has started. All Christians are already resurrected upon physical death in the manner described here, into newness of life. But that is not the point here in the first passage of Revelation 20. Instead, according to Kenneth Gentry at least, we have the first century martyrs in view. They've given up their rights to vengeance, crying out in Revelation 6 for God to avenge them, and he has promised to do so. This, in Revelation 20, is his fulfilling answer to that promise. These Christians on the thrones are now sitting in judgment. All Christians in heaven are reigning, but this is specifically directed to those martyrs who are now enthroned with Christ. The idea is to teach the 7 churches, and through them to teach us, that the persecution they are suffering and the perseverance they will show is going to be rewarded very soon. The church will triumph, and they will have the promised answer very soon to their question, how long? Regarding the binding of Satan, Kenneth Gentry says, quote, I believe that the 1,000 years is a symbolic time frame covering Christian history from the first century to the end. And I also believe that it teaches that Satan is bound in his mission to deceive the nations. Revelation 20, verse 3. In other words, Satan has been bound since the first century. Matthew 12, 28 to 29. This is from Gentry's book, Navigating the Book of Revelation. Although Revelation features much recapitulation, Revelation 20 is not a recapitulation of Revelation 12, because Satan is now cast into the abyss and stopped from deceiving. In contrast, in Revelation 12, he was cast to the earth, to battle men and in order to deceive, the very thing he is now stopped from doing. He was cast down previously to deceive, and now he's bound so that he cannot deceive. This doesn't mean that Satan has ceased being our tempter, accuser, and the great liar, but that his power to do so is bound. I think again of the loosing of Christianity from the false religion of the temple cult, promoting emperor worship, and the power of Nero to enforce cultic practices. In their world, John's audience now would be freed from that power of deception by Satan. The Judaizing denounced in the epistles and book of Acts and the mingling in of pagan cults has ended. As Gentry says, everything has changed in redemptive history with the fall of Jerusalem. Biblical Judaism ended, Christianity was universalized, animal sacrifice ended in God's true religion, and new creation was initiated. Man can no longer be controlled by his fear of death either, as Jesus has defeated death itself. Nor can Satan deceive us that our clothes are too filthy to stand before God, or that we are unworthy to serve him. We are the brands plucked from the fire, and that is the testimony of the 2 witnesses. Even though we might be martyred, we are actually alive. We have eternal life already. At the point of this writing, Christianity itself was already going out among the nations, and in a couple hundred years was to become the official religion of Rome. Satan was clearly bound in terms of this development. Over the millennia, we have now seen billions come to Christ, and Christianity is the world's dominant and its most persecuted religion. The nations cannot stop Christianity. Satan is bound, and he can't hold the church back.